Good evening. I'm Liz Archuleta, and I am the Arizona spokesperson for HECHO, Hispanics Enjoying Camping, Hunting, and the Outdoors. And I'm one of the founding board members of HECHO. So it's so great to welcome you to our virtual cocktails and conservation. We are celebrating Earth Day. Happy Earth Day, everyone. It is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And the theme for this year's Earth Day is climate action. So we're so happy to celebrate Earth Day with you. And HECHO is so thankful that you are healthy and that you're able to take time out of your day to mingle with us. This evening, we have people joining us from several states: Arizona, Virginia, Michigan, Utah, Idaho, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, Tennessee, and New York, and Nevada. So thank you all. I want to introduce you to our fabulous HECHO team, those folks who are on the call, and our incredible advisory board. We have, first of all, Camilla Simon, HECHO's Executive Director.
Hi, everybody.
And I know she wants to.
Happy Earth Day. I'm so excited to be celebrating with you all tonight. It's about 8 p.m. here on the East Coast, and I know we have a spread of time zones here, so welcome everybody. I hope you have a good time.
Great. And we also have Amy Dominguez, HECHO's Communications Coordinator. Amy?
Hey everyone, so glad to see you all. I'm so glad that everyone got my email okay. Thank you for joining us. I'll be sending a couple messages here in the chat for everyone to see as our program goes on. So stay posted to that, but welcome. So happy to see everyone.
Great. And our incredible board members, we have Viviana Reyes. We have Rebecca Chavez-Hook. We have Lynn Cordova, and we have two of our founding board members, Mark Cardenas and Kent Salazar. So the HECHO team really thanks you for being on tonight. We are going to do introductions of everybody who is on our Zoom meeting, but first, because this is cocktails and conservation, we're going to make a cocktail. So you received the recipe and the ingredients for a Paloma, one of my favorite drinks. The Paloma means dove in Spanish. And of course, the dove is a sign of peace. And I think we all need a little bit of peace during this time in our lives. And so now is the time to get your ingredients out right now. Get them out for your Paloma. Or if you want to get out the ingredients for your favorite cocktail, something that you like to drink, or maybe pull something out of the fridge, a bottle of beer or a bottle of wine, or get your orange juice or your soda, and go ahead and get ready to pour yourself a glass, because after our demonstration of the Paloma, we are going to have a toast. So we have one of our HECHO followers in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Felice Baca, who is going to teach us how to make a Paloma. Take it away, Felice.
Hi, everyone. So I am your bartender for the evening. I would like to see everybody's IDs just to make sure. Just kidding. But for the Paloma, this is also one of my favorite drinks. And because it's a tequila-based drink, I wanted to just give you two sustainability facts about tequila. So when you're shopping for your tequila, you want to make sure that your bottle says 100% agave. If it doesn't say 100% agave, then it's probably not the most sustainable tequila and is filled with more fillers and less environmentally friendly ingredients. The other fun fact about when you're shopping around for tequila is that you can actually look on the labels. Some tequilas are now starting to label them as bat friendly. And what that means is that 5% of the agave on their farm is actually fully matured to encourage pollination. So those are just two fun, sustainable facts about tequila. And here's the recipe for the Paloma. So I'd like everybody to grab your glass and 1 lime. And you're gonna cut your lime so you can salt the rim of your glass. Like so. You wanna get a good enough amount of salt along the rim. And I'm not a real bartender, so this is actually really fun. And what you're gonna do is you are going to gently put salt along the rim as such. And then for me, I like about 3-4 cubes of ice in my palomas. So we're gonna add the ice right now. And then after you add the ice, you add the good stuff. So you're gonna add your tequila. Just like that. And palomas can be made a few different ways. The thing that makes it a paloma is the grapefruit or toronja juice. And so being that we're currently in quarantine, I had a little bit of trouble finding grapefruit juice, but I did find Topo Chico with grapefruit flavor. So that's what I'm actually gonna use tonight. And before I add that, the way my family has always made palomas is to add a pinch of salt directly into your glass right before you add the rest of your Topo Chico or toronja juice, whatever you have on hand. And so your glass is gonna look like that. You're gonna fill it as such. And then I want you to take the other half of your lime and you're gonna squeeze it directly in there. And this is really based on your own personal preference. Some people like to use a lot of lime. Some people like no salt in theirs. Some people like theirs really salty. I'm like the one in between. And so you're gonna take your straw, your stir, whatever you have on hand, give it a little mix, and ta-da, your paloma.
Great, thanks. Well, hey everyone, why don't you pick up your glasses of your beverage and let's have a toast. Let's raise our glasses. We're also going to take a photo. So hold your drink to the side of you so that we don't block our faces. And let's make a toast. Ready? Here we go. If you can raise your glass and let's toast to this incredible planet that we live on, and to the fact that we are able to spend this time together and able to connect to one another. Salud, everyone. Good health to everyone.
Salud.
Salud. So now let's go around and do some introductions. And the way we're going to do this is we're just going to ask everyone to share their name. There'll be an activity that we have where you'll be able to, we'll have a fun activity for us to be able to introduce ourselves further. But right now, let's just go around the room and share your name. We're going to shine the spotlight on you. So you'll be able to tell when it's your turn to talk because your name, your face, excuse me, will appear on the screen. So when you see your full face on the screen, you'll know that it's your time to say your name. Okay? So Camilla will shine the spotlight on someone, then we'll just go around the room here.
All right, looks like it's me. I'm Feliz Baca.
Hi there, I'm Jan Balsom.
I'm Jimmy Jane in Flagstaff.
And I'm Megan Kelly.
I'm Kent Salazar in Albuquerque.
I'm Keith Ward here in South Carolina.
Hi, I'm Amber Reimondo in Flagstaff.
Hi, I'm Michael Lerner, New York City.
Cool.
I'm Lynn Cordova in Phoenix.
Hi there, I'm Audrey Cruz in Flagstaff, Arizona.
I am coming to you from the moon. I'm Mark Cardenas.
Hi, Brian Kurzel from Colorado.
Hi, everybody. David Martinez from Phoenix.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Chavez-Haug from Salt Lake City.
Hi, everyone. Viviana Reyes from Flagstaff.
Hi, this is Nikki Julian from Phoenix.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Hi, everyone. Anna Tobaran coming to you from Towson, Arizona.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Dominguez. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Now's the time to take another sip of your drink, and we're going to turn it over to our first presenter for our learning moment part of our program. And so we are going to welcome Jan Balsom, who will provide us with a virtual tour of the Grand Canyon National Park and a brief overview of the park's climate-friendly plan. Jan is the Senior Advisor of Stewardship and Tribal Programs in the Office of the Superintendent. So we welcome Jan from Flagstaff, Arizona. Jan?
Thank you for that. Let's see if I can get all of this up and running correctly. Don't want to start too soon. So as Liz mentioned, I am here in Flagstaff, Arizona. My normal place of residence is the south rim of the Grand Canyon. And I have been at Grand Canyon for most of my professional career. I actually moved out west from Western New York to go to graduate school at Arizona State University. So lived in Tempe for a number of years and then realized it was a city and it was kind of hot a lot of the time and I wasn't all that happy down there, and was lucky enough to meet somebody who worked at the Grand Canyon who asked me if I'd be interested in coming up and working on a project. I was a graduate student in archaeology. I'm an archaeologist by training. And that led to a lifelong love and appreciation of the canyon. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to have a career while working there. So what I thought I would do today on this 50th anniversary of Earth Day is take you on a little tour of the park and talk a little bit about climate action and what we've been doing. And it is interesting to see how many folks who have the ability to change their backgrounds on their Zoom screens have chosen the Grand Canyon for that background. A little canyon land, some hoodoos out there, but a lot of Grand Canyon. And it's an important place for all of us. So because I was not sure where everybody was coming from, I thought I'd just kind of give a little orientation to where we are. And on our left-hand screen, the United States with a big yellow arrow there showing northern Arizona and where the Grand Canyon is. A little closer view here on the lower right, showing Grand Canyon amongst all of the other national park units in Arizona. And because so much of my work consists of working with tribal communities, I included just a small icon of our tribal medallion. The tribe called the Canyon home. Grand Canyon is such an important place for so many people. It is a World Heritage Site and has many, many designations. If you were to fly into the Grand Canyon off to the east, this might be what it would look like for you as we come into somewhere on the east rim out towards Desert View as we're flying in over the Tanner Trail area. The Colorado River is snaking its way back here, and I don't know if my pointer shows up. Navajo Nation, Hopi Land are out here. So hopefully you guys can see this, and then the little Colorado coming in this area. So, and here's the river. We're getting right down into the Tanner basalt area of the canyon. up here towards the Little Colorado River confluence. So this is what it would look like if you had this opportunity. And I have to admit that over the years of working at Grand Canyon, I've had more than my share of helicopter rides. And my computer is telling me that restart is required. So if something happens, I apologize. It's deciding to update itself. The mission of the National Park Service is one that we take very serious, which is that we preserve and impair the natural and cultural resources and values of the parks for the enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. The Park Service cooperates with partners to extend those benefits of natural and cultural resource conservation and outdoor recreation throughout this country and the world. And it's, you know, it's at times like this that we sit back and we reflect upon what our mission is, what we're able to do, and what our reach can be in terms of those next generations. It is fundamental to the mission and it's core to what we do. The Grand Canyon as a World Heritage Site is one that, let me see if, yeah, there we go. It is a World Heritage Site. It was inscribed as a World Heritage Site in 1979. It's a National Historic Landmark, and we have many specific landmarks within the parks. It's part of the National Scenic Trail System. It's a proposed wilderness. We are a dark sky park. Believe it or not, on the north side, the National Natural Landmark for the Kaibab squirrel, and many more designations. And the stunning beauty of the canyon is something that most people realize. We talk about half the park is after dark when we look at our night sky designation. And we're often reminded of Teddy Roosevelt's 1903 quote that comes up often that I want to ask each of you to do. It's one thing in connection with its own interest and in the interest of the country to keep this great wonder of nature as it is now. I hope you will not have a building of any kind, not a summer cottage, a hotel, or anything else to mar the wonderful grandeur, the sublimity, the loneliness, and the beauty of the canyon. Leave it as it is. Man cannot improve upon it, not a bit. The ages have been at work on it, and man can only mar it. What you can do is to keep it for your children and your children's children, and for all who come after you, as one of the greatest sights which every American, if he can travel at all, should see. Keep the Grand Canyon of Arizona as it is. And it would seem that that would be something simple to do. But as we all know, especially those of us working in public land conservation, it's not as easy as you would think. I think right now on this Earth Day, as I've been reflecting upon this, one of the oddest benefits, I think, of our current pandemic is the canyon actually has a break. There are no people right now. The park is closed. So in a way, we're giving the canyon a little bit of a break without any visitors so that the animals can roam, so that the canyon can breathe, and hopefully do some resetting itself. By the numbers, a little over 1.2 million acres is Grand Canyon National Park. 94% of the park is proposed as wilderness. It is one contiguous unit, despite the fact that we have the North Rim, the South Rim, Desert View, Inner Canyon, various designations for management, but it is one park. Last year, almost 6.5 million people visited the park. Around 2,500 year-round residents. Our legislative history starts in 1893 when we were designated a forest reserve. 1908, we were established as a national monument by Roosevelt, 1919 as a national park, and 1979 rather as a World Heritage Site. Most of you, I think, have been to visit the park, so none of this should be too surprising. We've really focused the last couple of years on a number of specific initiatives, including building a respectful and inclusive workplace, working towards protections and management of Colorado River, trying to modernize park infrastructure, and a lot of that speaks to our climate action plan. Bison management, turning the Desert View area, which is our east entrance, into the Intertribal Cultural Heritage Site of the park, our backcountry management, international dark sky status, cleaning up some of the remnants of uranium mining in the park at the Orphan Mine, continuing to work on protecting natural soundscapes. And the latest one is recognizing the need for wireless communication for both residents and visitors. In 2010, the park actually completed a action plan as a climate-friendly park. And it's interesting, again, on the 50th anniversary that climate action is the theme of this year. And we started working on this 10 years ago. And we've had our fits and starts for sure. It's not been an easy road. As we all know, that sometimes these initiatives take a little longer than we had hoped. But we had started working on this. We had a lot of meetings with community to try to engage on a number of different levels. But becoming a climate-friendly park really meant focusing more on our actions, how we can do better at what we do, and taking steps towards becoming a zero waste park, becoming a more sustainable park, and trying to teach our visitors, because we have a pretty big pulpit as one of the most visited national parks, where we have the opportunity, I think, to lead in education. So the lower right corner here shows the park's visitor center area, which has gone solar. You can see all the solar panels, and that was through a grant through APS. So I think partnerships is a huge piece of that. You know, it's every day, everywhere we look, we try to engage on a lot of different levels and trying to make sure that our visitors understand this. The canyon has, it's, you know, over 2 billion, 5 billion years old, depends on who you want to talk to, 6 billion years. You know, we're here, we've been at Grand Canyon as a national park for a little over 100 years now. And the canyon will survive a lot of things, but we as stewards of this planet need to do our part to help. So as we think about what we do at Grand Canyon and your own parks and your own outdoor activities, conservation, preservation of our natural environment, all of these pieces kind of come together as a call to action for us, and I think each one of us, and how do we help preserve all of these places for future generations. So with that, go green. Green is Grand Canyon. We're doing everything we can from LEED buildings to encouraging bike riding to CNG and LNG buses. Our International Dark Sky thing was actually a huge effort. And that involved changing out, I don't know how many thousands of light bulbs, but all of these things contribute to going green, keeping us all moving toward the future. So that's what I had as an introduction for you, and an overview and a little bit about climate action. And if anybody's interested in actually seeing our climate action plan, just let me know, and I can ship a copy to you or send it to Liz and she can get it out. And we also have an awful lot of information on the park's website, including virtual tours and a whole series called Grand Canyon in Depth if you wanted to know more about specific topics or interest areas. Some of our rangers are doing some Facebook Live posts right now, and had we not been closed, we would have had special programming for Earth Day in the park. And you know, we'll continue doing what we can, and for us, it's Earth Day every day. So with that, I'm done.
Great. Well, thanks, Jan. We do have time for a few questions. So if you have a question for Jan, just go ahead and let us know through the chat. If you have a question, just write in there to everyone, I have a question. Or you can always just kind of flag us down like this, and we will call on you for a question. So let's just take a few seconds and see if anybody has a question. We do have a question from Amber, so if we can spotlight Amber, she can go ahead and ask a couple of questions.
Hi, Jan. I just had a question for folks on here, for all of us on the call. I feel like at the government level, sometimes there can be a lot of bureaucratic or otherwise obstacles to achieving goals that the Park Service might have. So I was wondering if there are any specific obstacles that Grand Canyon National Park is facing in taking climate action or making climate-focused decisions, and if so, what are they, and what can folks do on an individual basis, if anything, to help the park overcome those challenges?
You know, those are great questions, and I hate to say that it's the answer I think most of us who work for agencies face, which is lack of funding and staffing. The staff that we had working on this, of course, we ran out of money for. The best thing is that we have partners who want to do the same thing. And I think it's at that community level. The fact that Flagstaff was out there doing it first, the Kaibab Paiute Indian tribe got their dark sky designation, that it really helps when you see your community. And then the public recognition of it. One of the things that's so disappointing to many of us right now is the fact that our annual star party, which would be in June, which really celebrates our dark sky status, has been canceled because of the pandemic. And it's totally understandable. You don't want to bring a couple thousand people together to all put their faces right up together on a telescope. But it's that knowledge that we share. And the more people who understand the importance of it, the more people who will care about it, not just here on the Coconino Plateau, but in their home communities. So I think it's that recognition, and I think it has to start locally, and it just keeps building. And I think that's what we all can do individually, and then get others interested in it on a regional level and hopefully a global level.
Thanks so much, Amber, for the questions. Is there anybody else that has a question of Jan? Just let us know if you have a question by using the Zoom chat function, or just raise your hand, or just go ahead and get our attention by speaking out. Okay, we do have a question from Keith Ward, and we're going to go and spotlight him. He has a question. Go ahead, Keith. And then after Keith, we'll go to Michael Lerner.
I saw that one of the items was about expanding wireless communications and the network infrastructure for the residents. And the part, do you know, if you had this information, what the team is doing there for green IT initiatives, especially when it comes to energy consumption and data center design?
I wish I was more technically savvy on this one. Part of our initiative is always to be as green as we can be and as efficient as we can be. The rural communities have a really hard time right now, and Grand Canyon is certainly one of those, where we're so far down that we don't, I'm trying to think of how to say this, we have so little to start with that by its nature, we're pretty low energy because we have so little. That said, each of the companies who wants to come into the park will have to adhere to the green standards that we've established. We're not going to be, the way that the Park Service is doing this, we're not building anything. We're providing an opportunity for others who might want to provide that service to us to come in. And we've partnered with the Grand Canyon School is actually bringing up fiber optic from Williams through a grant, a federal state partnership grant. And then any of the consumption for individual sites has to meet our other requirements for low energy, low voltage, low everything, to keep in sort of in check with everything else that's being proposed. I know the micro cell towers are the things that most people are interested in, and associating those with alternative energy sources has been part of the design. I don't know, Keith, if that actually answers it, but if you want to get more information, I can provide that to you.
Thank you.
Great, now we're going to go over to Michael Lerner. Michael from New York.
Yes, thanks so much for your talk. It's really interesting to hear this firsthand. I'm just wondering if, given the park closure now for the pandemic, is the staff able to undertake any, maintenance projects or things that would otherwise have been very tricky or even impossible to do when, tons and tons of visitors are coming all the time? Like, is there any silver lining to this extended closure? Thanks.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think it's really odd to be a park employee and to be walking around when there's no visitors. And I've lived through multiple government shutdowns, but in a government shutdown, the community is still thriving. We have a school, K through 12, daycare center, bank, post office, all of those things. And with all of those things closed, it makes it a very different situation. That said, it gives us an opportunity to do required maintenance that we haven't had the chance to do. We've got work going on our water line right now, which perpetually breaks. Without visitors, it makes it a whole lot easier to kind of get in. We've got folks out on the trails doing trail work. We're working on facilities and housing, and it's been an interesting for many of the staff who aren't in positions where teleworking works for them, like our fee collectors. We have the entrance stations aren't there. So what are our fee collectors doing? They're actually helping out with facilities maintenance and doing projects. So at the end of this, despite how odd it is to not have visitors, we'll be able to actually do some catch-up work. So that was a great question, and we've all been thinking of all the things that we can do now that we don't necessarily have time to do. That said, I found myself on about 20 hours worth of conference calls and webinars in the past 4 days. So for some reason, this isn't really giving me a break.
That's great. Well, that's all the time we have for questions right now for Jan, but we are going to send you, HECHO will send you a follow-up email as part of our follow-up to this event. Just so everyone knows this, we're going to send some amazing videos of the Grand Canyon that Jan shared with us so that you can see the canyon at night and see these beautiful skies and stars that she was talking about, as well as some other places of the Grand Canyon that you normally wouldn't see unless you were hiking down the Grand Canyon. So we will share that with you as a follow-up. And thanks so much, Jan. Just really great information. We're so glad that you could join us, and really wish everybody just good health over at the canyon. And I think you're right. It's giving the Grand Canyon a little bit of a chance to rest and rejuvenate. And so from that standpoint, it's really good.
Yep, thanks. And thanks everybody for listening.
Great. So, okay, friends, now it's time to refresh your drink. If you need to put a little bit more ice in that drink, or if you need to refresh it and put a little bit more of a beverage in there. And we're going to welcome Amber Reimondo and Megan Kelly from the Grand Canyon Trust. They're going to share with us some of the work they're doing on climate change and its impact on the Southwest, including the Grand Canyon. Amber is the Energy Program Director and Megan is the Energy Program Associate. Their presentation will include a game of trivia, which will be really fun. So when we get to that part where they are asking the trivia questions, what we'd like for you to do is to use your Zoom chat function. There will be it'll be multiple choice, so just rest assured, don't get too worried. It's multiple choice or true or false questions, so we can all take a guess at it. And it'll be 1 through 3 or T or F for true or false. And you can use your Zoom chat to give your answer to the trivia questions. So let's welcome Amber and Megan.
Hi, everybody. Megan's going to share her screen here. Awesome. So like Liz said, Megan and I work for the Grand Canyon Trust. We're a regional conservation organization and environmental nonprofit. Our mission area is the Colorado Plateau, which you can see a map of here. The Colorado Plateau encompasses northern Arizona, northwestern New Mexico, western Colorado, and eastern Utah. And our mission at the Trust is to safeguard the wonders of the Grand Canyon and the Colorado Plateau while supporting the rights of its native peoples. Next slide. So in the presentation today, we'll go through some main objectives. First, we want to give a little bit of Climate 101, because while some of us may already be familiar with climate change, or probably are already familiar with climate change, I think it's always helpful to have a little refresher on some of the basics, because you spend so much time saying that it's an issue and that there are things we need to do to address it, but we all can kind of forget the more foundational aspects of it. And then we will talk about how climate change is affecting the Colorado Plateau and how it's expected to affect the Colorado Plateau in the future. We'll talk about some of the main contributors to climate change, some of the main emitters on the Colorado Plateau. And then we'll go through and discuss some options for climate action and what we can all do on an individual basis. And like Liz said, there's trivia throughout. So next slide. So one of the first things I think that is like climate change 101 that's useful to have a refresher about is the differentiation between climate change and global warming, because both of those terms get used interchangeably a lot. And sometimes when you're writing about one or the others, people just think it's like writer's preference. But there's a little bit of a difference. Global warming refers specifically to the long-term warming of the planet, so the average temperatures of the globe as a whole. Climate change is more general than that, and it refers to the changes happening to the planet as a consequence of global warming. So it encompasses global warming, but it is not exactly equal to global warming. Next slide. So what causes global warming? The greenhouse effect is something that's critical to Earth being an inhabitable planet. Without it, we wouldn't be able to live here. It would be too cold. But the greenhouse effect it happens when greenhouse gases they're emitted into the atmosphere, and they allow for the trapping of heat. So it lets light in, but doesn't let heat escape. So there's a certain amount of the greenhouse effect that is critical to us even being able to exist. But then there's a threshold over which it starts to become too much. We start getting a higher density of these greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. It's trapping more heat. And then we start having things like overall global warming and climate change. Next slide.
So like we were just talking about, well, the greenhouse gas effect is a natural process that makes the Earth livable. Over the last 150 years, humans have enhanced this type of warming significantly through activities like burning fossil fuels. So you can see from this graph, which was created by NASA, that the industrial activities that our modern civilization depends on have raised atmospheric carbon dioxide levels from 280 parts per million to 412 parts per million in the last 150 so years. So according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, their 5th assessment report, on a global scale, we need to prevent temperatures from rising more than 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit above pre-industrial levels. If we pass 1.5 degrees Celsius and approach 2 degrees Celsius of warming and beyond, this would likely push us over a threshold that would trigger a positive feedback loop of further warming that would be nearly impossible to stop. So to stay under this 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold, we need to take aggressive action as a global community to reduce emissions by 45% from 2010 levels by 2030 and bring the planet to net zero emissions by 2050. And just as a reminder, net zero means reaching a balance of zero emissions. And this can be accomplished by reducing emissions as much as possible and then compensating for what can't be eliminated through carbon offsets or renewable energy credits. And so this is our first round of trivia, and you can go ahead and enter your response in the chat box. So which of the following are 4 of the major greenhouse gases? 1, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and water vapor. 2, carbon dioxide, methane, radon, nitrous oxide. Or 3, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, ammonia. And we will look in the chat for answers. Great. Awesome. So I'm seeing a lot of number 1s in the chat box, and if you guess number 1, you're correct. The 4 of the major greenhouse gases, according to NASA, are carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and water vapor. So nitrous oxide comes primarily from agriculture through the fertilization of soils. Methane primarily comes from energy production and use, agriculture, and waste management. It's definitely found a lot in landfills. Carbon dioxide primarily comes from fossil fuel combustion. And then water vapor is a little bit more complex. It comes from water evaporating into the atmosphere, which seems like pretty harmless, right? But the thing about this is that the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere exists in direct relation to temperature. So increased temperature means more water evaporates and becomes vapor, and increasing water vapor in the atmosphere leads to warmer temperatures. So this is a spiraling cycle that's often referred to as water vapor feedback. And this can also amplify the warming effect of other greenhouse gases. So for example, the warming from increased carbon dioxide also allows for more water vapor to enter the atmosphere. And so the cycle just kind of continues like that.
Cool. The second trivia question we have for you all is a true or false question. And it is, all greenhouse gases are equally impactful. True or false? You guys are quick. Yep. So if you chose false, that is the right answer. Can we go to the next slide? So each greenhouse gas has what's called a global warming potential, which is assigned based on its strength in trapping heat in the atmosphere. And that strength depends on a couple of factors, but one of them being how long that gas exists in the atmosphere, because they all break down over time, but some of them take a lot longer than others. So global warming potential is helpful when we're trying to compare different greenhouse gases and the severity of their impacts on climate change, because the way that we think about it is carbon dioxide has a global warming potential of 1. It's like the base unit. And then we compare all other greenhouse gases to that. So methane, for instance, has a global warming potential of 28 to 36 times more. It's 28 to 36 times more effective at trapping heat in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide over the course of 100 years of it being in the atmosphere. Nitrous oxide is even stronger. It's 265 to 298 times more powerful than carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere over a 100-year period. So it's just really important to know what global warming potential is, because when we're trying to evaluate what emitters are the biggest culprits in contributing to climate change, we have to be able to compare apples to apples. And if CO2 is being emitted by fossil fuel burning at a volume of 10 metric tons from a certain source, and methane is emitting less volume, maybe just 5 metric tons, we need a way of comparing those two, because it's possible that the methane emissions are actually worse than the carbon dioxide emissions. So when we talk about greenhouse gas emissions inventories and we talk about CO2 equivalent, that is in reference to this global warming potential. So we talk about methane emissions, nitrous oxide emissions, and carbon emissions, all in terms of carbon dioxide equivalent, so that we're able to compare apples to apples. Next slide.
Okay, so our next trivia question is, which of the following are consequences of climate change in the Southwest? Is it 1, rising temperatures, 2, increased number of heat-associated deaths and illnesses, 3, decline in water supply, or 4, all of the above? And again, you can enter your response in the chat box. And I'm seeing a lot of number 4s, and that is correct. You guys are super fast. It's awesome. So So yeah, on the Colorado Plateau, we are incredibly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. According to the National Climate Assessment, parts of the Southwest already reached the hottest temperatures on Earth, and these temperatures are projected to rise, along with the number of heat-associated deaths and illnesses that are already happening in our region. Water supplies and ecosystem integrity are on the decline, and because of increased drought and wildfires, the cultural resources and spiritual well-being of Indigenous peoples in the region are being affected. So climate change is one of the most consequential threats of our time, and as an organization operating in one of the most vulnerable regions in our country, it's a challenge that we have to rise to meet. And we are going to touch on how we're doing that here in a minute.
So next trivia question. What are the top 3 greenhouse gas emitters on the Colorado Plateau? And I recognize here that if you're not from the Colorado Plateau, you may not be super familiar with the region, but we are a very rural region and we have a lot of public lands. So I guess that's a little bit of context for you. Take a guess at what the top 3 greenhouse gas emitters are. All right, can we go to the answer? So if you chose number 2, that's correct. It's a little tricky there because coal refers to coal mining, but a lot of emissions actually come from, that are related to coal, come from electricity generation. So one of the things that the Grand Canyon Trust has been doing over the last year is conducting a greenhouse gas emissions inventory for the entire Colorado Plateau. And that greenhouse gas emissions inventory is not public yet. We're still finalizing it, so you guys are all getting a sneak peek. And so most emissions, like I said, come from the oil and gas industry. They come from electricity generation, which includes the combustion of coal, and transportation. So this graphic that you see here is something that our GIS analysts put together based on the data that we compiled in our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. And as you can see, on the plateau as a whole, 124,012,655 metric tons of CO2 equivalent are emitted on the Colorado Plateau every year. And then you can see the breakdown of different sectors. But can we go to the next slide? It's you, Megan. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Thank you for unmuting me. So our final trivia question is, what is the top emitting county on the Colorado Plateau? And this is a map of the counties. So is it 1, Navajo County, Arizona, 2, Mesa County, Colorado, 3, Millard County, Utah, or 4, San Juan County, New Mexico? And
again, this one might be biased toward people who live in the region and are familiar with these areas, but
yes, also that. Cool. So if you guessed number 4, San Juan County, New Mexico, you are correct. So yeah, San Juan County is the highest emitting county on the Colorado Plateau. And if you look at this map, the darker the color, the more emissions coming from that county. So in San Juan County, emissions are primarily from oil and gas and coal. And Garfield County, Colorado, the second highest emitting county, emissions are primarily from oil and gas, electricity, and transportation. In Yavapai County, Arizona, the third highest emitting county, emissions are primarily from electricity and transportation. And then in Utah County, Utah, emissions are primarily from transportation and electricity as well. So now we wanted to open this up to a group discussion. We're curious to know from you all, what are some steps that can be taken on an individual level to reduce emissions and combat climate change?
Feel free to write it in the chat or just unmute yourself.
Yeah.
I'll unmute myself and say that we can use our bikes more than our vehicles.
Yeah,
That's great.
definitely.
Especially because you can see that transportation is such a huge contributor to emissions.
I think educating people too, just about this, because I think that some of this would be surprising to folks. So just like, spreading the word on what is causing the various impacts to the Southwest and to the Grand Canyon. And so just, more readily sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thank
Anybody
you.
else?
This is Kent. I worked on the Western Governor's Grand Canyon Visibility Study many years ago, and it's not just the canyon region that's affecting the canyon. We found that the highest level of emissions was coming from southern Colorado, and it was due to the number of vehicles. So we talked about reducing the mileage, improving the CARB standards for automobiles in that area. But we can all reduce our emissions if we reduce our size of our car, plan our trips, and reduce that. And it affects places far away that are Class 1 wilderness areas.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And we went ahead and made our own list of pretty simple suggestions. We think, there are lots of things that happen at a federal level that are in some ways a little more obvious, but also in some ways a lot more difficult. So we thought it would be helpful for folks to just have a little simpler list of things that you can choose to do on a daily basis. And I think when it comes to advocating for things like clean and renewable energy and climate-friendly policies, we just wanted to also underscore the fact that a lot of times the local level gets overlooked, but the local level is significantly important. The changes that can happen based on local policies and regulations and decisions about infrastructure can have a ripple effect. They can reduce emissions locally, but then that also provides a foundation for federal changes to be made if they see that their constituents in back home are making decisions that that reflect the priorities of citizens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And do we have any questions?
So Amber, I'll go ahead and start out. Can you just tell us a little bit more about, for those who are not familiar with the Grand Canyon Trust, just what type of organization is it? And then in terms of this work that you're doing on climate change and when are you going to roll out the information in terms of your study?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as an organization, like I mentioned earlier, we're an environmental organization, but we work in a lot of different areas. So we have a Native America program, we have a volunteer program where we actually send volunteers out into the field to work on change that needs to happen. We have a cultural landscapes program, and then we have my program, which is the energy program, where Megan and I work. And a lot of the work that we do focuses on uranium mining, because there is interest by a handful of companies to mine for uranium on public lands adjacent to Grand Canyon National Park. So a lot of our time goes towards that. And then from a climate realm, we have a lot of help from our legal team because we end up ultimately filing lawsuits against coal mines that are trying to expand without considering climate change, for instance. And we're working to try to get improved methane regulations. As some of you probably know, oil and gas operations have a lot of methane emissions associated with them. And under the Obama administration, there were a lot of really helpful regulations that weren't perfect, but they were a good step forward that were put into place. And under the Trump administration, they've been rolled back. But I think in terms of this newer initiative, we're just trying to recognize that, as you could see from what Megan was presenting from the IPCC's recommendations for what has to happen to prevent the worst effects of climate change. The kind of change that has to occur is something that's much grander than a simple organization like ours or any one organization at all can make. And we think that the broader, the more important, more impactful decisions that are made are ultimately data driven. And when you have information, you have power. And so we're trying to create that in doing this greenhouse gas emissions inventory so that we and other people can actually have the information in front of them to be able to make decisions and prioritize things where they can spend their limited resources and expertise to actually create the change that needs to happen on the very rapid timeline that it needs to happen. So we don't have a specific timeline for when our full rollout will happen, just because there's a lot of analysis that needs to happen internally, but I can say that the actual inventory itself should be publicly available in the next couple of months. There's just a lot of considerations that go into how we present that information to the public so that we're not inadvertently creating a paralyzing situation instead of a helpful situation. So
great. Sure, thank you. Okay, well, I think we don't have any other questions. So thank you so much, Amber and Megan, for the great presentation. And many of you may remember Amber and Megan, who worked with us and on our Agua es Vida presentation, where they presented about uranium mining at the Grand Canyon. And so thanks so much for being a partner with us. We really appreciate it. And now, friends, I'm getting to about the bottom of my drink, and so it's the time is now for us to close out. So we're at the end of our program. We want to thank you for attending, but we are going to do a closeout to our program. We had so much fun with you. I'm going to turn it over to Amy Dominguez, our communications director. She wants to make an announcement about our newsletter and how you can join our newsletter. And then I have just one final activity for us to close out our program. So Amy?
Yes, thank you, Liz. I just wanted to invite everyone to join the HECHO newsletter to stay aware of future events like these. You know, we don't really know where things are going with this pandemic, but this was so much fun and we'd love to do it again. So I am going to pop over a couple links in the chat for our HECHO newsletter, as well as our HECHO Facebook page and HECHO Instagram page. I hope that you'll give us a follow. I hope that you will sign up to receive our newsletters so that we can share all of the awesome work that's going on and all of the future events that will be taking place virtually for the time being. So I'll pop those over in the chat, so just stay aware of those. But thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I'll pass it back over to Liz.
Great, well, thanks, Amy. Really appreciate that. And so we are going to now just take a group photo. I know we did one with the drinks in our hand, but we're just going to do one without our drinks and make sure that we have a photo just to show everyone our virtual cocktails and conservation, and to have one for HECHO just to remember all of you by. And we'll send it to you too when we send our newsletter. We're going to count down. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Great, that's perfect. Okay, folks, now to close out our program, we are going to go around and I'm going to ask each of you to mention one intention that you have for our Mother Earth, for our Madre Tierra, in celebration of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And so we will start with Viviana Reyes, and then we'll move the spotlight to each of you. So one intention you have for Mother Earth as we celebrate Earth Day.
Sure. So my intention is to continue recycling. I do some of it now, but it's definitely something that I have to be mindful about and to make sure that I'm doing on a daily basis. So my intention is to continue recycling in order to protect Mother Earth. Thank you, and this was fun.
My intention is to ride my bike to work as many days as I drive.
My intention is to start being more intentional about having a meatless Monday or a couple in my weekly food intake.
My intention and commitment would be to continue reduction of single-use anything. Recycling is awesome. We do recycle and recycle glass, but focusing more on elimination of any single-use product.
My intention is to just kind of keep a better eye on my own greenhouse gas emissions and find more ways to reduce them.
My intention will be to clean up more litter and trash on trails and in wild areas to make it a better place every time that I go out.
My intention is to practice more empathy when I'm talking to people about climate change, because I think that important change is only possible if people are convinced, and if they're made to think that they're doing something wrong or something stupid, then that's not helpful. So
my intention is to cut back on my family's use of plastic. It's a little trickier to do in this pandemic, but still something that I would like to commit to, cut down on our plastic use.
My intentions is to use less water bottles.
My intention is to let other people know what is going on, especially our legislators when I visit them, and just to continue recycling.
Hi, my intention is to continue our recycling program here in our city. Also continue our tradition of planting trees on Earth Day. We'll be doing that next week as well too. And with the building of our new city hall is continue for the past 10 years as we've been doing our clean initiative in buildings and making sure they're LEED certified.
Hi, my intention is to use public transportation more, and I also like the idea of meatless. I was doing meatless Wednesdays and I stopped that, even though this guy won't like it too much because he always tries to steal a bite of my food.
My intention is to, like Michael, clean up my nature trails everywhere I go to make them better, and to continue my practice of planting trees on Earth Day once a year.
My intention is to actually enjoy the planet more. I spend a lot of time being focused on work that I tend to forget that there's a lot of beauty around it I need to appreciate more.
My intention is to get better at not using the single-use plastic bags. I forget my my car at home sometimes, so I gotta get better.
Gonna spotlight myself. My intention is to, and it's actually happening, plant a garden with my 2 daughters.
My intention is to plant a garden with my 11-year-old and also just teach him our cultural practices and traditions that have been in my family for generations, which is to be stewards of the land and to protect Mother Earth by what we're doing on a daily basis. And so I want to pass that tradition on to him.
I I
think everybody, right, friends?
There's one.
Megan and Carmen, maybe.
Everybody else, that's all I see right now.
Okay, super. Well, and I just wanted to give just a really quick shout out to Mayor Ana Tovar, who joined us for our event, Mayor of the City of Tolleson. And so thank you so much, Mayor, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you to all of you. That is the end of our cocktails and conservation. So if you, we wish you all a very good night, and sending you many, many virtual hugs, and look forward to seeing you for our next cocktails and conservation. In the meantime, abrazos y buen salud a todos. Hugs and wishing you great health. Take care all.
See ya.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.